It's the wonder of nature, baby!
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this installment of Uncut History. Once again, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on a good, wonderful Thursday evening. I am your host. I guess just read out that's not all that grandiose of a title. And for the next hour or maybe 2 hours, we're just going to ramble about some more caves because it is still Caveuary here on Uncut History. Essentially, every stream this month, we're going to talk about a cave system because what could be more exciting than a bunch of rocks? I promise it's going to be more exciting. I promise. And we actually got a few other things planned for tonight as well, so stick around. There's going to be a couple different topics. First topic of business, when I logged in about a half hour ago tonight, set up the stream, I apparently hit 2,000 subscribers. Yes, finally. It has happened on the channel, so I get to crack open a beer. I'm allowed to do it. I'm celebrating. I'm allowed to do it. It's 2,000 subscribers. I think I'm allowed to have a celebratory beer, right? It's not really all that celebratory. It's Coors Banquet, so we're not going high scale on it. But yeah, we hit 2,000 subscribers today. Very excited. That's been a goal I've wanted to hit for this channel for a while. We hit 1,000 subscribers in August of 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And we did the John Brown Isekai. We did a live dramatic reading of our favorite abolitionist exploits in a isekai setting. So that was a lot of fun. We did that for the 1K. I had never really planned if I hit 2,000. So that's why it just kind of happened and there's no big celebration. I guess this stream counts as a celebration of 2,000. But yeah, and I think I've had this account open since let me see if I can see on the YouTube. Per YouTube, it says I joined July 21st, 2014. So almost 10 years this channel has been around in some capacity. I don't think you would call it a success, but I have enjoyed making videos. But really, I didn't really start doing the readout production stuff. This used to be called like DX Productions for many years, and I just threw odd videos, many of which are now secretive now, unless you have the link for it. I think there's all 5 of you have the link for it. So yeah, I started making this channel in 2014, didn't have a lot of focus for it, and briefly I decided I was going to make this into a like movie review. I was going to go out and I was going to basically do vlogs documenting me going to thrift stores, buying in movies in bulk. I was really into movie collecting once I graduated out of high school. That lasted all of 6 weeks because then the pandemic, the funny virus happened, and really couldn't go out and do that. So that kind of killed that plan for the channel. And then I decided to go back to doing historical content. And I'd always done odd history videos, but it was more rail fanning. And maybe occasionally I would have a steam locomotive. I would go see a heritage railroad and I would document it. When I finally became committed to doing readout productions as it currently exists was only about, I'd probably say about 2.5 years ago. And the idea of retracing history, which is the core channel, these vlogs where I go out to historical locations, they didn't start out like that. They were initially going to be themed retracing blank. So the idea was, oh, we're going to retrace the Ligonier Valley Railroad. And then we're going to retrace the Indian Creek Valley Railroad. And we're going to retrace the Dar Mine disaster. And we're going to retrace the Mammoth Mine disaster. You see the trend that was going. So these were going to be large-scale documentaries. I was only going to make them sparingly, but then I decided to rework it. I went to the Allegheny Portage Railroad when I've been, 2021? And that was the moment because originally the video was called Retracing the Allegheny Portage Railroad. And I decided to retool it, so I don't think the algorithm was liking what I thought was being clever. I reworked it to being called Retracing History, Episode 2, as I had just done another retracing of Bushy Run Battlefield the week prior. And that kind of started off the current trajectory of the channel. That's why I became a little more committed to my content. And since then, we've had Retracing History, Artifact Highlight, and then I started doing Uncut History in frequently November 2022. And I think it was around March last year that I decided to make it into a weekly series, or as much as I can keep track of it being a weekly series. And here we are now. Here on the TubeU and the Hate Book and Rumble, which is the broken Rumble. It shakes too much. It's always broken. Yep. So yeah, we're at 2,000 subscribers, long and winding road. We'll see where the next 1,000 subscribers take us, or if we do get to that height. I hope we do. I hope we can get to 3,000 subscribers, but I am very satisfied with 2,000 subscribers. Thank you all for staying with me in my travels, and I hope I can keep making content that satisfies you. Now, moving on to our main, well, not quite yet, because one other thing I wanted to mention, so this is kind of like a channel update. The next few weeks, there's going to be quite a bit of retracing history. I got back from a trip from Gettysburg just a few weeks back, filmed a lot of content, and you're going to see that all unfold. So a lot of retracing history episodes. There will be an artifact highlight, and there will be a trip tapes to wrap it all up. And then after that, after we're done with the behemoth of Gettysburg content, I want to take a break from Gettysburg because, I mean, I was there in November last year, then I went back there in January. I don't think I'm going to be going to Gettysburg for some time, at least not for the channel to go make content. I'll probably pass through to go pick a few items up for my Living History decor. In March, me and a humble collector are hoping to set out for the eastern half of Pennsylvania to go where we have never gone before, and that is to document American Revolution sites. And the reason we're doing this is partly next year, 2025, will be the 250th of the United States of America, the start of the revolution. So we kind of want to get on. We want to get on the bandwagon. There's going to be a lot of Road to Revolution content coming out across all different historical platforms on YouTube. It won't just be from Readout Productions, but I'm going to try to get in on it as well. After all, one of my major studies is the French and Indian War, which is a key element to the creation of our country today. So we're going to go out east. We want to go visit Valley Forge. It's our priority. So there is going to be a Valley Forge video coming in the near future. We're on a very limited time frame when we go out. So I have a few ideas on what else I would like to cover. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of it, so I'm not going to announce it all. The goal is to get to Valley Forge and focus on a few other aspects of the Philadelphia campaign of 1777. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out in spring of this year. And I really don't know what I'm going to be doing in the summer. I truthfully don't know. Probably not a good idea not to have a set plan, but I think it'll be for the best as I have a lot of possible opportunities in the future. And I don't know where the future may take me. And I don't want to commit to something that kind of cuts me off from a better opportunity. Uncut History will definitely stay around. That's for certain. I've always thought if all else fails and I'm not able to travel and I'm not able to produce the retracing histories and the artifact highlights, at the very least, I will try to produce content through Uncut History. That would require me actually dumping some money in a proper camera because, boy, the frame rate. I'm just looking at myself in the screen right now. Oh my God, look. It's like it's hand-drawn animation, the worst kind. You can see the frames. Oh, it's bad. So yeah, if I do fully commit to Uncut History being the main thing for the channel, definitely will have to get involved with some better equipment, better camera, better lighting. I like my blue microphone. I think it does a good job. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming to spring. I don't know what'll happen this summer. But if there's one thing certain about Redoubt Productions is that nothing is for certain. Now let's head over to our featured content today, and that's because we're going to be talking about the Florida Caverns. Yay! Why did I choose Florida? Be quite honest, because I really haven't done a lot about Florida on this channel, so I decided time to change that today. So let us dive into the history of two cave systems in Florida. We're going to the Florida Caverns State Park. Let me just pop right over here. Now, a little bit about Florida and how cave systems work in Florida. The main portion that we know today as the state of Florida has its roots back millions of years ago, when a supercontinent that had the essence of what would now be today Africa and South America rammed into North America. And for a little while, you had a little thing called Pangea, where you had everybody was all one. Everybody was one singularity of continents, I guess you want to call it. Well, a bit of that subcontinent, that supercontinent that became South America and Africa, jammed right into what would become the continent of North America. And when Pangea broke apart, that little piece that we know today as the Florida Panhandle did not go away with it. It was wedged pretty darn tight into the North America continental plate. And over many more millions of years, Florida became submerged in a warm but shallow ocean with a lot of ancient maritime life living around there. And over the millions of years, this maritime life... Well, my cats are fighting right now. What are you doing? What's it? Can I just speak about rocks? Is that so hard to ask, Lily? Can I just sit here and bore the audience with geology and speleology? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? What again? What is the study of? What are we dealing with today? What are we dealing with today?
Yeah, geography.
Geology.
Yeah, well, actually, seismology.
No, we're not measuring earthquakes. We're talking about caves. We're talking about caves. So now the other cat's over there. He's on the railing. There's a railing. There's a stairwell right outside my door here, and there's a railing. Well, he thinks he's an acrobat, so he will get. Not only will he get on that railing, he uses it as a scratching post. It's a horrifying thing, and you just kind of have to get used to it after a while. That we just trust that he knows what he's doing. He's not going to fall to his demise. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So, yes, millions of years, this piece of what used to be Africa and South America got lodged into North America. Then it got covered in an ocean. And now you have all of this maritime ancient life laying on that panhandle. And over the years, those aquatic life forms are going to die off in the thousands and the millions and the billions. And their remains are going to gradually pile up over the centuries. And that's going to create various deposits of limestone. Now, to cover that limestone, you're going to have more deposits of sediment coming down from the north, actually coming off of the Appalachian Mountains. Funny story, the Appalachian Mountains were at one point the tallest mountain range in the world. Yes, they were taller than what we know today as the Himalayas, but we're talking millions of years ago. And millions of years of erosion is going to break down those mountains, and a lot of that deposit is going to move south and be picked up by the remains of the ancient ocean. And as the waters recede and become rivers, they're going to be deposited all across Florida, all across the southeast United States, burying that limestone in large quantities. Now, of course, there are going to be fractures in these clay rocks that's over the limestone. And not far up in the northern portion of Florida, in Jackson County, Florida, a particular situation is going to ensue where, as that ancient ocean disappears, it's going to turn into a river. And that river I have written down, and my brain decided, no, you're not going to remember it. So I'm going to go to my notes, which, if you subscribe through Ko-fi and become part of the Redoubt Productions Garrison, you will get access to these notes. And they do generally save my butt every stream. So if you want to get if you want to just read the information, you don't want to listen to my tongue twisting, mouth speaking, because they're subscribing to Kofi. So, the Chipola River, which flows through Jackson County, Florida, that is going to start leaking down through the cracks of the clay and going to make contact with that limestone. And we're talking about this contact being made approximately 30 million years ago. So this cave system is, I think it's actually, because if I'm not mistaken, when we talked about Mammoth last week, Mammoth was about, 15 million years it began to form. So this is a little bit older. But what ends up happening is along the Chippewa River and what we know today is Jackson County, Florida, 30 million years ago, acidic rainwater from the Chippewa River is going to seep into the rocks, seep down into this limestone, particularly the Mariana Limestone Foundation, and it's going to start to dissolve it. And again, we talked about the process, why this acidic rainwater is formed and why it dissolves limestone. It's a whole wonderful science thing. And over millions of years, it's going to dissolve that limestone. And what you're going to end up happening is you're going to get a very karst topography, which karst topography is just translation for this is a part of land that has a lot of cave formations and can have a lot of sinkholes because there's a lot of erosion happening underneath the surface. And there is a particular track in Jackson County, Florida, where you can see on this map, we're not talking about one massive cave system. So we're not talking like Mammoth, where Mammoth was just singularly connected 400 miles of known passages in Kentucky. This is a much smaller cave system, and they are disconnected. But nevertheless, you're going to see they're all in a relatively close area. Let me get up close and personal with that map. You'll see along the Chipola River, which, if we're looking at this map, I believe would be that curvature on the northwest boundary. It's going to eat away at the limestone in isolated areas, but in a very close proximity. And it's going to create about 5 different caves in what will become a state park in the 20th century. Now, in this cave system, and this is an image here, give you an idea of that karst topography I was just talking about. Oh, no. God, I hate... no. Why do I always... So that gives you an idea of what the surface looks like around the Chipola River. You have a lot of cave formation above ground where the limestone's been eaten away at. And this is a very interesting image. Doesn't look like much. So you'll see the Chipola River in the foreground, and it looks like an embankment. So that's not just a simple embankment. Actually, you're looking in the direction the river is flowing. This is a natural bridge. So the Chipola River actually goes underground for several hundred feet, which these sink rivers are not uncommon to find in the world, but you have to have a very particular topography, a karst topography. Actually, here in Pennsylvania, we have a sinking rivers. If you go up around State College, they call it the Sinking Valley because literally there's rivers that go. You'll see they'll have like several hundred feet above ground, then it'll go into a cave system for miles and come back up as the same system. So that's what you're seeing right here. That's a natural bridge, just showing you how unstable the topography in this region. But now let's get underground into the actual Florida caverns. So to understand that Florida caverns is a certain cave that is in this, I guess you want to say, park of different cave systems. Remember, they're not connected like Mammoth, but they're very close to each other. And Florida caverns has the distinction of being the only show cave presently operating in Florida, at least the only show cave that you can actually walk into. Most caves in Florida are submerged underwater due to being very close to the water table. I mean, we know that, Florida isn't really known for its height. So most of these underground cave systems, they're fully flooded. Not Florida caverns. And actually, a lot of its sister systems, it's all dry as well. So you can actually go and explore this with the proper fee to the state of Florida, of course. Of course, you gotta go through the ticket booth. Now, a little bit more about Florida caverns and its sister systems. The limestone that was dissolved, Mariana limestone, it's identified as a soft, pure white chalk rock. And 19th century settlers to Florida actually found a way to mine this limestone, and they end up using it to make chimneys, the rocks for chimneys. So Mariana limestone is known as chimney rock. And the limestone foundation isn't just in northern Florida. It expands across the state border over through Alabama and even into Mississippi. So it got quite the birth this massive foundation does. And if you go down into the cave system today, you will find evidence of that ancient life that made up all this limestone. So you'll find all sorts of shells and fossils. And basically, when you're walking through the cave, keep in mind, you're basically walking on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, millions of years ago, of course. So, yeah. And let's check over the comment section. Hey, we got Wrangler. Thank you for tuning in. And he does give us a 420. I'm going to try to start using that clip, if we ever get super chats. I apologize if I blew your ears out as well. I didn't realize until the stream Sunday how loud the videos were. So after this week's stream, I'm probably going to have to go back and re-edit some of the clips because I want to use them more frequently. But thank you again, Wrangler. Thank you for support. You've been a big supporter of this channel for well over a year now. Thank you for your support. All right. So, and looking at these images inside Florida caverns, you'll notice we got a lot more of the typical formations we think of when we think the word cave. When we saw Mammoth Cave last week, it was very dry. And because of that very powerful rock formation that's above the limestone in Mammoth, not a lot of water trickles down through. Well, Florida caverns is a very different story. It is a very wet, it's as wet of a dry cave as you can get because the rock that's above it really isn't any strong. It's just a few degrees stronger than the limestone that's been eroded. So there's a lot of areas for water to seep through. And when it seeps through, it's carrying these deposits of the various minerals, including the limestone. And as you do that, it'll build up over thousands of years, and you end up with your stalagmites and your stalactites. And in many cases, you'll end up having columns being formed. In this case, you can see the two halves have actually met. And yes, stalactites and stalagmites, they do refer to different halves of that column. Stalactites are tight to the ceiling, and stalagmites are on the ground. And I'm going to double check that I did not mess it. Come on, it's a 50-50, right? I didn't mess that up. Yeah, stalagmites, because you might trip on them. Okay, yes, stalagmites are type of rock formations that rise from the floor of a cave. Yeah, so stalagmites, because there is a saying I've been told on tours to caves that, stalactites are tight to the ceiling, and stalagmites, you might trip on them, so be careful. So stalactites, they come from the roof, stalagmites come up from the ground, and eventually they will meet after enough years, and you'll end up getting a column. Yeah, see, I wasn't the only one that remembered that. I'm not the only one that's been taught that. So yeah, there's a lot of these formations, and I'm actually going to talk. So this right here, this might be the coolest formation. I was watching a short vlog that went down into the cave, and this might look like a sheet of glass. It's not glass. So they call this the South American formation because this rimstone dams up water. And since there's no real airflow in this portion of the cave, there is no air rippling on the surface of the water. So it's just stagnant. And it has a perfect mirror. You can see it's basically reflecting the image of the cave ceiling. So, and it's also called the South American rim because the rimstone's in they claim it's in the shape of the South American continent. So I don't know. This is just a cool image to look at, just untouched by air. You're not going to see this on the Earth's surface. Nowhere else are you going to see something like this happen. Only down in the Florida Caverns Cave. And this is not actually part of the show cave. This is part of the state park. This is one of the sister cave systems I was talking about that I believe you have to be a spelunker to get approval to actually go into it. They call this the Dragon's Belly. And yes, again, why I'm dedicating a whole month talking about the history of caves is because I like the human history that's tethered to caves. The imagination gets to run wild in these caves. And when you get to name these different formations, you have to use your imagination. And in this case, somebody decided the whole cave system they're in looks like a dragon. And they figured this is the belly of the dragon. And they also have like a dragon's tooth in this system, the dragon's mouth, dragon's wing. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Now, it is believed that indigenous people living in this part of Florida knew of this cave, and they actually used portions of the cave system to seek refuge when first the Spanish settled in the region and later when the United States conquered Florida. And also, there's a rumor that Jackson County, Florida's first Catholic Mass was actually hosted in this cave system in the 17th century. Let me look up the gentleman's name here. And now this is just more rumors than facts. I only found a few sources that were talking about this, but apparently a Friar Barretta, who of course would have been with the Spanish, held a Catholic mass, I presume for Spanish soldiers that were advancing through the region. And the reason they were advancing through the region is it's that land bridge I was talking about earlier that goes over the Chippewa River. This part of Florida is a very swampy region. And bridging ain't really a very fun bridging isn't really fun to do in a swamp. So they were looking for these land bridges, and there happened to be one in the present day boundaries of the state park, not far from Florida Caverns. Let me go back to the image. And so initially, indigenous people used this land bridge as a passageway between villages. Then the Spanish used it as they came and settled into the region. And also in the 19th century, when the United States were fighting the Seminole Wars in the region, they also used this vital artery. Now, a little bit about the Seminole Wars, because actually the Seminole Wars are very important to tonight's live stream. If you're not familiar, the Seminole Wars is considered the longest conflict the United States was ever engaged in. It's technically 3 different wars, but if you combine the years up, that's over 30 years of combat in the early 19th century. How have you never heard about this? Well, a lot of the fighting was guerrilla warfare based. It was a lot of hit and run fighting. There weren't a lot of major pitched battles that you'd be familiar with in the history books. So it doesn't make for good romanticized war stories. Let's just put it that way. And it also had to deal with the fact that Andrew Jackson was the general in charge of the United States Army, at least during the first Seminole Wars. And well, let's just say wasn't one of his brightest moments in his career. We can say a lot about Andrew Jackson, but this is going to culminate with the Trail of Tears. There's a lot of reasons why the United States went to war with the Seminole people, which is actually a loose term for different tribes that lived in Florida. The short of it is the United States wanted Florida and were going to take it. And initially, Spain, in the early 19th century, Spain still had control of Florida, and they gave some meager backing to the Seminole people, but they very quickly decided to not want to get involved in a war of the United States and decided to sell Florida over to the United States, which greatly upset the Seminole people, which spurred off the second major war in the 1830s, which culminated with Andrew Jackson ordering all indigenous people to be relocated west of the Mississippi River, and that'll spawn off the Trail of Tears. There were holdouts, which leads to a third Seminole War in the 1850s before officially most of those tribes were either relocated to Indian territory or reached an agreement for small reservations in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and that southeast corner of the United States. So the Seminole Wars is a massive conflict, which I hope someday to explore more on the channel. Actually, I believe Project Past, who's one of my favorite channels, he does similar videos as myself, but more for the southeast United States. He's done a few videos on the Seminole Wars in the past. I believe I think History Savior 1941 has also done at least one. I could be confusing the two. And I know Project Pass is going to be doing a video on the Dade Massacre to Spring. So definitely go over check his channel. He's going to be making a lot of Seminole War content, and I am here for it. So yeah, Seminole Wars are very important in Florida history, very important in United States history, and they're going to be brought up as we continue talking in tonight's series. So when the Seminole Wars were occurring, and especially in the 1830s, and when the United States military was sent in and basically they were deporting all of these people. They were, well, I shouldn't say they were taking them from their homes and throwing them into a different world, taking them out of Florida. It is said by oral history that Seminole people actually sought refuge in what would become Florida caverns. There is dispute on this. But it seems that it would have been a very good refuge. I mean, getting down underground. And by all accounts, while the United States Army were familiar of the karst topography, they didn't really know what was really underneath their feet. They're like, okay, there's probably caves here, but they weren't going to send soldiers one by one down into the cave. That's not a good idea. Not a good tactical idea. Don't do that. That's how you get picked apart. So. Now, this cave system was pretty popular for travelers. There's actually, there's a passageway that went over that natural bridge not too far. But again, the cave really wasn't focused upon. More the timber in the late 19th century in the region. The cave was sawed. There was sawmills throughout the region. And they actually, at one point, they actually carved a channel through the natural bridge so they can float logs down the Chipola River. And this is a very common story you'll see in the wake of deforestation. You're going to see state officials and sometimes federal officials step in the early 20th century, buy up property and make it into a reservation, into a preservation for nature. And it was an added bonus that not only do we need to preserve all this timber and this natural bridge, there's all of these cave systems. And most of the cave systems the public can't visit in Florida. This one it can because the water has drained out for the most part. So in the 1935, the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was part of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal administration, the CCC came down to this region where this karst topography was and began developing it into a state park. And they worked on establishing footpaths above and underground, establishing a campground, establishing a 9-hole golf course, interestingly enough, establishing barracks for themselves, establishing new roadways that wouldn't damage the nature in the park, establishing a visitor center, and even actually connecting some of the caves together to form a show cave. And they also did all the lighting that you're seeing in some of these photographs, or at least they started the idea of the lighting in Florida Cavern State Park. In 1942, Florida Cavern State Park was officially open, in large part because the CCC funding was cut since World War II had begun. The park was open, was an immediate hit with the Florida populace, and has remained a staple attraction if you go to northern Florida. Presently, we're not going there quite yet. Is this about the reptilians there? So thank you for tuning in. Hey, it's Marina. Not so much on the reptilians. We tend to focus more on the human history here. So we're talking about more the human history ties. But that you mentioned it, Florida Cavern State Park does have a population of cave salamanders, which are, from the best I can gather, are blind salamanders because they live in caves. It also has a small population of blind crayfish, which I was looking. I didn't pull up an image for the video. If you go look up a photo of a blind crayfish, a blind cave crayfish, they're basically see-through crayfish with no eyes in sight. They're transparent. They're one of the freakiest creatures I've ever seen. And they actually do live in the water pools that still exist in the Florida Cavern State Park. So that's a little bit about the animal life inside these caves. Now, if you do want to go visit, they're typically open Thursday through Mondays. They're closed Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And of course, they are closed for certain holidays. Definitely check it out if you're in the area. I do have family that lives in Florida. Unfortunately, they're down in the Orlando region. They're not anywhere near this. Like, weirdly enough, all the stuff I want to see in Florida is up in the northern half, like in the Tallahassee area, because, Lusty Battlefield is not too far from there. This will not be too far from there. So, yeah, this is Florida Cavern State Park. And very quickly, I believe I have their page. Don't I have their page? Yeah, I have their. We'll actually pop over very quickly. I'll show you a bit more, show their page. And I'll drop a link so you can go virtually explore it yourself. All right, so let's just get this set up. Hey, look, I can actually show. That's actually a Rumble thing. So, yeah, I can actually show Rumble comments as well. Now let's grow a massive terrarium in there and make it look like an underground jungle. Yeah. Be a lot of. I don't know if the Park Service would appreciate that. It would look very cool, though. And Fu Man Blue drops in another for 20. Again, sorry if I'm scaring the. Sorry if I scare the crap out of you guys. I got to edit the audio on some of these things. Well, there's a lot of learning process with StreamYards. We'll get to that later. But yeah, here is the website. Yeah, baby. So here is the website for the Florida Cavern State Park. It's actually through the Florida State Park System website. 8 a.m. till sundown, 365 days. Cave tours offered Thursday through Monday. Welcome to Florida Cavern State Park. Yep. So yeah. There's actually the image there to the right is actually a monument to the Civilian Conservation Corps. There's monuments like that. That monument's reproduced hundreds of times to several state parks across the country that the CCC contributed aid to. There's actually one not far from where I'm living. I'm actually planning someday. There's a couple CCC camps not far from where I live. I've been wanting to go back there and do a retrace in history on them. Maybe that'll be a March project. So yeah. Definitely go check out. I think this is a cool cave system, especially because it got the fossils in there. It got a lot of formations, and I just like that rimstone that looks like South America and the water's steel. There's just something so fascinating about it. CCC, that'd be the Civilian Conservation Corps. They were founded in 1933 as part of the Roosevelt administration's New Deal. This was probably his longest contribution. Most of the New Deals didn't really work. Like, he did a lot of stuff like the WPA and stuff that didn't work as long as the CCC. The WPA, which was the Work Project Association. I have that messed up. The WPA did urban infrastructure. The CCC did rural infrastructure. The CCC saw a lot more of enlistment, especially because most people greatly impacted by the Great Depression were rural individuals. So they took the job opportunities. And a lot of your state and national parks that are developed in the 1930s and 40s is because of people in the CCC. The CCC also, whether intentional or not, set up, train hundreds of thousands of young American men to be able to be in fit health, be able to get a higher education, be able to work long hours outdoors, effectively made them very fit for military service. And funny enough, a lot of these CCC members would become soldiers and officers for the United States Army. Funny how that works out. But I could do a video on this. I could speak for hours on the Civilian Conservation Corps. Yeah. Food for thought. Maybe you should be Fu Man Green. Hey, you're double dipping. Hey, I see you over there. I see you over there. All right. So I just dropped a link in, by the way, guys. So if you want to go and explore a bit more, Florida State Park. Well, that's not the whole thing. Hold on. You're just going to get the generic Florida State Park page. I guess I need the extension that says caverns. Yeah, that'd be nice. Now, this is not the only cave we're going to talk about in Florida. Now, I said that basically this is the only show cave that the general public can visit. It's not the only dry cave that you can explore. But to go to this next cave, you got to be a little experienced in caving. So, let's go back over here. We are going over to Warren Cave, which is located in Alusha County, Florida. Again, we're still in northern Florida. Now we're moving a little bit down the panhandle. So instead of being way up north, we're now moving down a little bit into central Florida. And Warren's Cave is the largest known cave system in the state of Florida, with over 4 miles of passages. Interestingly enough, that's the same number of passages that's in my nearby show cave of Laurel Caverns. Funny how that works out. And it also has an interesting history tied in with the Seminole Wars. Now, how Warren Cave was formed, essentially what happened was, my brain just blew a tire. I'll be right back mentally. I have that happen sometimes. So how Warren's Cave ended up being formed, because I mean, it's so unusually long compared to the other Florida caves. You saw how these caverns that we just saw, they're all kind of small pockets, which the CCC connected together for tours. So it's artificial tunnels that connect them. This is all one cave. This is all natural, wild, as intended to be. No funny lighting, though I do like my cool colored lighting in caves. Don't get me wrong on that. Warren's Cave was made because of a fracture in the western side of the hillside. So there was a fracture in what we would call the Hawthorne Foundation, which is a limey sand clay. And that allowed water to trickle into this hillside at an angle. So we're not talking about rainwater going right down. We're going down at an angle through like a crevice that goes through the Hawthorne line of the Hawthorne Foundation, which is just sandy clay. And it goes through that sandy clay and it makes contact with, this is the part where you should be saying limestone, and it makes contact with the Crystal River limestone. And since it's coming in at an unusual angle, it means that gravity is going to kind of pull that down, farther and farther at a very long degree. And that's why Warren's Cave is the largest known cave system in Florida, because it just was allowed to trickle down in such a way that gravity allowed for Mother Nature to carve out a interesting system, at least for the state of Florida. Now the cave gets its name from Colonel John Warren, who was an officer from the Seminole War. To be technical, we're talking about the Second Seminole War in the 1830s. And not far from the entrance to this system, Colonel Warren commanded about 100 Floridian militia and U.S. soldiers in the Battle of San Velasco Hammock. Which hammocks essentially, this is a very dense woodlot. They were ambushed by a native party, but were able to drive them off. And local lore says that John Warren discovered the cave after the battle. He probably didn't, though a few years later, a stagecoach road ran right in front of the mouth of the cave. So, he wasn't that far from it. His men were just feet away from where this cave was. So aptly named, even if he himself didn't know about it. So that's how it gets the name Warren's Cave, from a Seminole War officer. And from the 19th and early 20th century, many explorers went down into the cave, but they only really went down the first 400 feet. And that's because they would hit a wall, and though they can feel air coming from underneath, they were like, no, I can't fit through that. And that's how it went. Warren's Cave was also very dangerous because it isn't just a nice walk in. You actually have to shimmy your way down. So it's a crevice going in at an angle, a lot of pitfalls. And there was an attempt to make it into a show cave in the 1890s, but you had to go down a wooden ladder to get into the crevice, and then you had to make sure you didn't go down these pits. And there were 2 gentlemen that were killed I believe in the late 19th century because they weren't paying attention where they're going. So Warren's Cave had a reputation. It was a fascinating cave, but it was a very dangerous one to explore. But the only first 400 feet were ever really navigated. That was until 1959. 2 members of the Florida Speleological Society. Gosh, what are we talking about tonight? I can't pronounce speleological because that's supposed to be the study of caves. I just like saying geology, but it's really not what we're fully talking about. We're studying caves, not simply rock.
Yeah, geography.
Geology.
Yeah, well, actually, seismology.
So in 1959, these 2 members of the FSS, they go into the cave and they're believing there's something beyond this little notch in the wall. And they went down there with their tools and got it wide enough that a body can maneuver its way through. We're talking just a few feet, just enough for the smallest person to squeeze through. And they actually called it cashew squeeze. But these two men got through cashew squeeze and they discovered, oh, there's a lot more than just this first 400 feet. And more people of the FSS would go in and explore. And it was found there's actually 3 different layers of this maze cave system. The uppermost layer has heights of no more than 4 feet. So when you're first going in, there's not a lot of mobility. Then you got to get your way through the cashew squeeze. But once you come out on the other side, you're going to deal with a middle level that has ceilings as high as 10 feet. Ceilings, nothing of chert. So don't put your hand up there because you're probably going to get your hand cut on that chert. And then for those that choose to go even farther, if you're able to squeeze your way through more tight notches, you can enter the lowest level, which goes as 40 feet deep below the Earth's surface. And in the early 1960s, the FSS were wanting to make proper maps of this cave system, and they actually had to run a telephone line from a base camp at the crevice that went into the cave, and they had to get that telephone line all the way to wherever the caving crew was. And I ended up discovering, they ended up mapping several thousand feet that had never been known before. So we went from this big of a mysterious cave to that's a big Twinkie. Yep, that's a big Twinkie. Now, even though this cave had a reputation of being dangerous, it didn't stop people that weren't trained in spelunking. Several more people got caught and trapped, leading to rescue efforts. And eventually, the Nature Conservancy, which I believe are the people that own the actual San Feliska hammock where that battle occurred, they actually purchased the whole property in 1976, so nobody could go back there. And in 1991, the Conservancy donated it to the National Speleological Society, who owns it to this day. So it's basically a spelunker's dream to go back there and cave exploring. Like, as long as you get written permission and you're trained to go cave exploring without a nice paved trail, this is paradise for you. Now, Warren's Cave does not have a lot of fauna. Really, the only noticeable animals are when you first go into the entrance. There's a pack of mice. But besides that, blind salamanders have been seen taking shelter, but they've never been living long term. It has been confirmed there are blind crayfish in the lowest levels of this cave, but at least the most recent write-ups I read for this presentation, the water table got particularly low in Warren's Cave, and there was no sightings of those crayfish for some time. So yeah, not a cave the public can go to, but I think it's just a fascinating story. And just imagine just get through that cashew squeeze and then coming out on the other side. And I mean, you can see the map here. That's the 4 miles of known cave systems. And again, these maps of cave systems are deceiving because these levels are kind of on top of each other. You're kind of winding your way down into this hillside. Now, peek over here. These are some illustrations. Off to the left is the new entrance to Warren's Cave. They actually just installed that only 2 years ago to make sure that it's safe and secure and people don't go in and vandalize. And the image to your right sees one of the cave explorers descending. Again, it's not a nice even path. This is a true cave that you got to climb your way up and down. And in the center there, you can see some crystals that have formed inside the cave. And I've also posted these images. Some of the formations, when you go far back enough, are so fascinating. Like, they look like sponges, and they call this the sand room due to its sand flooring. This is kind of like in the dead middle of the known cave system. But I know that if I go knock over that stalagmite in the corner, I'll get a power-up. Then I'll be able to beat the next boss. Yes, as the Nintendo has taught us, and does not dissuade us in any way. Oh, thank you for that compliment. I had a blast with Captain Garrett, and yes, he will be back on. We have this we've discussed. I told him my roughly discussing. I mean, I told him like I want you back on, especially after I read first installment of Blood and Oak, so we can have like that'd be cool. Wrangler, would you be interested if we did like a book club, like a small book club thing for Blood and Oak? Then we can bring Garrett in here, and then we can. And these are all the complaints I have with your right. No, just kidding. It's an idea. It's an idea to think about. I don't know when, but I have you on the docket. If I decide to read Blood and Oak, maybe we should get a few other people from the Gilded in, and then we can bring Garrett on for a stream. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So, yeah, so that's Warren's Cave. Again, this one the general public can't technically go to it, meaning you just can't stroll up one day and go inside. But with the proper training, you too can go through Cashew Squeeze if you're ready for it. If you're ready for it. All right. Well, what else do we got on the docket tonight? Oh, I'm going to drop a link in the description below. Oh, no. Well, it won't, wait, maybe it'll be in the description. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. Yeah, that's what I was going to do. And if you want to explore more about Warren's Cave, there you go. And it's appearing on the Redoubt Hate Book page and on the YouTube. Sadly, I can see Rumble comments, but I can't post on the Rumble chat like through StreamYards. We're getting there. We're getting there. It's just, it's frustrating. No, it's like how Rumble. It's like how Rumble, for some reason, made a user profile count for me a few weeks ago. So last week I couldn't understand why am I not able to. 3 weeks ago, StreamYard started allowing me to link directly to Rumble. Cool. Then last week it stopped doing it again. I'm like, what the hell? And then I started noticing some of my videos aren't mirroring over to my Rumble channel. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, here, Rumble computer generated a user profile count for me, which mirrored my main Rumble account. I don't know why. And my user profile count only is not my main account on Rumble. I don't know. Rumble's weird. They got a lot to work out. Yeah, it's true. We used to not be able to. This is the first time I think I've been able to share. Or this is the first or second time I've been able to share. I've been able to share comments. And if you guys excuse me just one moment, I am going to just. Sorry, I don't know. It's like there's fuzz on my nose and it's driving me insane. It's weird. It's always weird. It's always weird. Let me go over here. So yeah, there's the website for Warren Cave for the Nature Preserve. All right. We're gonna go a little off-roading. So that's the cave portion of the tour tonight. I'm beginning a lot of notice lately that Apple TV is producing a lot of historical content, historical steered content. Right now, Masters of the Air is currently airing on Apple TV. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's an adaptation of a book. I believe I forget which unit the book is attached to. It's essentially about the B-7T bomber crews during the Second World War. And it's been talked about for well over a decade. I mean, basically after The Pacific was made by HBO, I already was talking about Masters of the Air being adapted. But it took many years, and eventually HBO didn't pick up the rights to it. Instead, Apple did. So this is a spiritual successor in the vein of Band of Brothers or The Pacific. But rather than us focus on more foot soldiers in World War II, we're now focusing on the air squadrons, and particularly the B-17 squadrons, and the nightmare that was doing the bombing runs over Europe during the Second World War. Now, I've not seen Masters of the Air yet. I'm going to try to see it later in March. I'm just busy. I'm pretty busy at the moment, and really, I don't like Apple TV. I really don't like their streaming form. Who is driving their motorcycle in the middle of February in Pennsylvania? That's like the second time in a week that's happened. Sorry, guys. I just like something on my freaking nose, and it's the fun. No, I know what it is. It's you. Yeah, it's you. It's you and your cat fur. Yeah. Oh, he ain't even looking at me. So Master of the Air is coming out. It's about the Flying Fortress crew. I've heard a lot of good things about it from a couple of my friends here on the YouTube. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I got to stress it, I'm not much of a Second World War historian. I know the basics. I probably know slightly more than the basics. but I don't deep dive like I can deep dive on the American Civil War. That's my bread and butter, and in the American Revolution as well. That being said, they're gonna do more. It ain't just gonna be Masters of the Air. Apple TV seems that they believe they've hit a market, which yes, they have. I'm here all for historical content that's done right, and that's key to remember, done right. And they've announced that there's going to be 3 new historical pieces coming out. One, well, it's a re-release. It's the Napoleon movie. That's not a good way to start. 2 is going to be a Michael Douglas starring miniseries on Benjamin Franklin, particularly focusing on Franklin's time in France when he negotiated a alliance between France and the United States. As far as I'm aware, no trailer's been dropped on that. Only a few images, and we got some brief video in a Apple TV Super Bowl commercial that released early. Now, one we have gotten information on is a series called Manhunt, which will be yet another interpretation of the Lincoln assassination. More particularly, it'll be focusing on the aftermath, the hunt for John Wilkes Booth and other conspirators, the trial of the conspirators. It's going to be all about that. So Edwin Stanton's going to be a big player in it, who was Secretary of War at the end of the American Civil War. The rise of President Andrew Johnson's probably going to be heavily focused as well. And of course, John Wilkes Booth will be a central character. I watched the trailer before going live. I don't know how I feel about it. Have you seen Good Will Hunting? The bar scene has some dialogue about history that sound interesting. Talk about that. Go. I have not seen Good Will Hunting yet. I'm so sorry. Robin Williams' most hailed most acclaimed performance, and I've yet to see it. I apologize. I thought it was going to be about the time he fought extra-dimensional werewolves on the moon. No, that's for the John Brown Isekai, and it'll do a much better job. So let me pull this up. I keep stalling. Where am I going? It sounds like Peter Griffith. All right, over here we go. Because I do have the trailer. I don't know how far we're gonna get into it. I don't know how long till we get copyright strike. So bear with me. I apologize. We got lost. I've watched this before, but we'll kind of watch it again. I'm gonna put the audio very low. So if you can't hear it, that's kind of intentional. There's the little Dillinger.
Born with a chance to be somebody.
Really small.
I'm gonna be the most famous.
Somebody was actually selling the Derringer. Somebody was actually selling a non-operating replica on Gunbroker about a year ago. I thought about getting it for my collection, just more as a talking piece, but nah, not for non-working.
Mr. President.
That's our President Lincoln. I've seen worse.
The Confederacy is dead. The Union is saved. The war is over.
Looks like we're going to Ford Theater.
Freedom for the South!
Not necessarily what he shouted. The debate is if he shouted Sic Semper Tyrannis or the South has been avenged. If you watch The Conspirator, they actually do both to cover their bases. Oh, that's a good shot.
What happened? The president's been shot. Witnesses are saying it was John Wilkes Booth. Wait, the actor? Do you know who I am? I'm a symbol.
Not the ED werewolves. What are you guys talking about?
How does a well-known actor commit murder in front of an audience of 1,500 people and escape?
Find the man that killed my husband.
So Tobias Menzies in here, and he's supposed to be playing Edwin Stanton. He looks, if he's supposed to be Edwin Stanton, he looks nothing like him, for the record.
Gentlemen, I am tasking you with the capture of John Wilkes Booth.
Oh, there's Patton Oswalt. Oh. Trying to see here some of the units, because that's a little bit more I would be more familiar with. Yeah, I'm getting nerdy on the imagery. Why is his cap box almost over his belt buckle? Pull it back, soldier. Yeah, but everybody got that on the right end. Hey, personally, I sling my... I sling my haversack over... Yeah, because that's his haversack. I'd sling that over this shoulder pad, not that one. But that's just me, because I want to be able to get my cartridge box.
This is a conspiracy to
So we are going to be showing the trials directly.
our government.
I know who you are, Mr. Booth. You gonna help us or not?
There's a bounty on the head of Booth. I intend to collect. Booth is being protected by the Confederacy.
Why does Patton Oswalt keep getting jobs?
No.
He's so desperate. Like, Oswald's like, will take anything. I get, yeah, I'm going to be a jackass. Patton Oswalt he's not a good, I don't like him as a comedian. I don't need him in historical pieces. Just,
Lincoln,
hopefully he proves me wrong.
Country belongs to us.
I will not surrender. May God be my judge.
What is up with his face? I saw this the first time around. It's like,
Be my judge.
I don't know, it's just because how the shadow is on the one side of his head, but like it looks like somebody did like a filter and like zoomed in on it. But I'm assuming there we're seeing the showdown where Booth is reportedly killed in a barn fire during a shootout. Oh, I presume that is supposed to be Richmond. Ooh, that's some bad CGI. Ooh, I don't like it.
God bless America.
So yeah, that's the trailer for Manhunt. Yeah, it's trying way too hard to make. It's like intense. I feel way too much modernism's gonna seep into this. So there's gonna be we're gonna treat the Manhunt for John Wilkes Booth like a modern day crime thriller, which there's not much you have to twist with this story, guys. Like it writes itself. I've always said most historical stories, you don't need much spin for them. They kind of write themselves. I mean, it's always there. There's a lot. It's just one trailer, and as much as I was being nitpicky on the privates and how they had their accoutrements laid out on their bodies, for the most part, I'm not the best on material culture. Like beyond the actual foot soldiers, I'm not too good on that on civilian stuff, so I can't comment too much. But Tobias Menzies, he's supposed to be Edwin Stanton, and let me get you an image of Edwin Stanton. Sorry, guys, for the delay. I got quiet. I got to pull these images up. So, no, that's not what I wanted. Nah, I keep hitting the wrong thing. So, let me remove that. Again, sorry about being so quiet, guys, but I got to like rearrange a bunch of stuff to make things work around these parts. So that's Tobias Menzies, who is reportedly, if I went to his, according to his IMDb page, he's playing Edwin Stanton. Perhaps everybody's got it wrong, and I'm really hoping they got it wrong, because this is who Edwin Stanton is. Very different appearance, and I didn't see, the only person to look close to this was Patton Oswalt, but as far as I'm aware, Patton Oswalt's playing a different character. If I Me. Now I'm starting to sound like Canadian Bear. Manhunt 2024. Also, Manhunt is such a generic name. Because you know how many freaking manhunts? I saw somebody in the comments said, I thought this was the first season of Mindhunter for a moment. And I liked the first season of Mindhunter for the record. Yeah, it says here, Tobias Menzies playing Edwin Stanton. That is not Edwin Stanton. Where's his beard? Where's his spectacles? Anthony Boyle's playing John Wilkes Booth. Actually looks pretty good for John Wilkes Booth. Matt Walsh is playing Samuel Mudd. I guess I can see it. I don't see any mention of Mary Surratt here, which is making me very curious. Where's Mary Surratt? Shouldn't she be part of this? Solomon P. Chase. Maritime. Yeah, Patton Oswalt's playing Lafayette Baker, and I don't think you guys can see currently. I'm on the wiki page. So Oswald's character is going to be Lafayette C. Baker, and I'm reading right from the wiki article. He was recalled to Washington after the assassination of Lincoln. Within 2 days of his arrival, Baker's agents in Maryland had made 4 arrests and had the names of 2 more conspirators, including the actual presidential assassin. Before the month was out, Booth, along with David Harold, were found alone in a barn, and Booth was himself shot and killed by Sergeant Boston Corbett, which is what I think where I was like, that face looks weird, but I think it's the shadow. That was the sequence that was showing the death of John Wilkes Booth. President Johnson nominated Baker for appointment to the grade of Brigadier General, but the United States Senate never confirmed the appointment. Baker was mustered out of volunteers January 15th, 1866. Following year, Baker was sacked from his position as government spy master. President Johnson accused him of spying on him, a charge Baker admitted in his book, which he published in response. Well, yeah, because everybody hated Johnson. So, and so I don't live far from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And President Johnson, I mean, everybody says that President Buchanan was the worst president in American history. Johnson's pretty close to it as well. The way he handled Reconstruction was appalling. And nobody liked him because he was a Republican in name only. He was more so a Democrat, but a Northern Democrat, and basically was made the new VP for Lincoln to try to unite the country in the 1964 election. And of course, with Lincoln's death, now he got a de facto Democrat in charge of the country. That didn't go over too well, considering who we had just defeated. So nobody really supported him. And Johnson had he called it around the circle train tour, where he made all these whistle stops in a desperate bid to appeal to the American population to like him. It went completely wrong. USS Grant almost went back to drinking because he was a guest on that tour for how bad it was. George Armstrong Custer was there, and there was like an ambassador. It was either like the ambassador to like India or like the ambassador to Japan, or like an ambassador to some country on, I think maybe it was Spain. It was the ambassador of Spain on this train ride. And it was a train ride from hell, and it stopped in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And so many people had crowded on this wooden platform that paralleled the tracks that it collapsed, killed 4 people. And because they had to keep a train schedule, Johnson's train sped away. And the American people basically thought he sped away because they didn't want to take blame for the accident. And many contributed as to why the impeachment hearings were allowed to go through. Just turned the whole country against Johnson, and basically he was a lame duck president thereafter. So I have to go talk about the first Johnstown, Pennsylvania disaster before the flood. I actually have a rough idea where the catastrophe occurred. There's no markings, but if you know the area, you can pick it out very well. Who would have thought it? So yeah, that's Manhunt. I hope to be wrong. I'm not really invested in it. I think the best theatrical adaptation of the Lincoln assassination, its aftermath, was The Conspirator. Now, that is primarily about the involvement of Mary Surratt in the conspiracy. But if you've not seen it before, check it out. Robert Redford directed it. It's a very small-scale court film, but it was very well done. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, Johnson, I think I could if we wait a few more months, I think I'd be better off playing Stanton than him. So, yeah. So, yeah, Apple TV's coming out with all these historical series. I know people are getting hyped for it. I am keeping a brown best musket length between myself and those series. If they're great, I'm glad to be proven wrong. I, of course, will never say no to a good Franklin depiction. But you have a lot to beat compared to Tom Wilkinson, who played Benjamin Franklin in the John Adams miniseries, and he was fantastic in that. Sadly, lost Tom Wilkinson just a few months back. All right. What else do we have on the docket tonight? You know what? This just segues into what I kind of, it has nothing to do with history, but I'm just going to rant. I'm having my ranting juice. So, turning the tables, let's talk about remakes. Remakes have been around as old as storytelling, and people trying to improve upon previous stories. This has been especially a popular tool with mainstream media in the past decade. You could argue even longer than that, but especially the past decade. And it's not just remaking. You get a good remake, like John Carpenter's The Thing, where it doesn't insult the original. It's not trying to say, well, that stuff's bad. This is better. No, what John Carpenter did with The Thing in 1982 was he adored the 1981 horror film. He adored it. And to this day, it's his favorite film. He never wanted to replicate it, but he wanted to take the essence of the story and take it in a very different direction. In that case, being a more direct adaptation to the novella Who Goes There. And you can see over my shoulder here, you can tell how much I adore John Carpenter's The Thing. So don't think I'm opposed to a remake. If you can interpret something in a completely different way that allows the original to stand on its own, I'm willing to hear it. No, because the remakes we get instead today is, hey, look, this is animated and people liked it animated, so we're going to make it in live action. That way, it'll be taken seriously. So there is a live action remake for the second time of Avatar The Last Airbender coming out. Now, I was a big history nerd growing up, and most that I watch, and I made a joke with Captain Garrett last week that I said, I wake up at 6 in the morning, I would watch Pokemon, then at 7 in the morning, I was watching the Civil War Journal. And I'm not joking behind that. Like, watching historical documentaries at the age of 5 and 6, that was right neck and neck, if not surpassing the Sunday morning cartoons. But I did have a few. I did have a few cartoons, and the one big one was Avatar The Last Airbender. So this is the one this is my darling. This is the thing I am very protective of more than anything else. So people have had their favorite franchise burned over the years. Now it's, I guess, my turn to be protective. Now, here's the thing. I already had my favorite franchise burned once. That was back in 2010. So, don't be surprised that I'm very, very protective of what's coming out at the end of this month on Netflix. Now, the first trailer came out, and to be fair, costuming looks very faithful. The designs of a lot of the settings looks pretty darn taken right out of the show. Here's the problem. It's the uncanny valley. So, on one hand, they're saying to us, look how faithful we have been at adapting the original source material. Which I'll just be like, so why are you spending all this money when you could just re-air the originals and everybody will be completely fine? Or make more of the animated world? But in the same breath, they say, look how faithful we are. Then we have people coming out and saying, well, we're going to take it in a different direction. I don't like those streams being crossed. So I don't need a live action one-to-one adaptation of something animated when the animated one is just fine, if not going to be more entertaining. I'm going to have more nostalgia value for. I'm just going to be thrown off of the uncanny valley of these people look like my favorite characters, but they truly aren't my favorite characters. And then you come around and say, well, we are looking faithful, but the story, we're just going to tweak a few things. Where have we not heard this before? They would always say, well, we have to tweak things for modern audience. For what? They did it for Star Wars. They did it for Star Trek. They did it for Indiana Jones. They did it for every single animated movie done by Walt Disney Animation Studio. I think they've said this for Mad Max. Well, I like Fury Road. I don't think I'd like it if it came out today, though. They've said this for pro wrestling, you could even argue. They've said this for countless video games, especially the Tomb Raider games. This is for a modern audience. They've remade The Last of Us, for Christ's sakes. And we're just barely a decade removed from the first game. They've made a live action TV series for it, and then they're remaking it, and then they're remaking Last of Us Part 2, which only came out, less than 5 years ago? They over and over again, they adapt something. It is for both, for adapting something from animation to live action, or when they are resurrecting a property that hasn't had a new installment in 10, 20, 30 plus years. They say it over and over. We are going to tweak it for modern audiences. Now, hopefully I'm just overreacting, because to be honest, what I'm reacting to is that one of the actors for the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender was talking about earlier this week how they had to tweak a certain character so they weren't as sexist, which shows that this person doesn't seem to realize the core character value of the character they're talking about. For the record, we're talking about Sokka, who's one of the three main characters in the first season. And Sokka's character arc, you could say, especially in the first season, is more him. He starts out being the man of the gang, the man of the tribe he comes from, because the tribe he came from was war-torn, and most of its warrior class, they're gone. They've been gone for years fighting a war. And I think he was 14, 15 at the start of the series. He's the eldest male left in this tribe that's fit for any type of service. So he takes it upon himself to be the warrior of the tribe, though he fails spectacularly and comedy ensues. He's the comedic relief at most moments in the show. And this also combines with the fact that he comes from a tribe with a lot of, male occupations and female occupations. And due to this lack of, I guess you want to say, a, father figure being absent for several years, and a lot of the adult men who are fit for duty gone for many years, he becomes he takes it upon himself in an overly manner to be very protective. And this includes anytime he sees any woman get into combat. And actually, I think it is like the 4th episode into the show, the Kyoshi Island episode, where this sexism, which he's not doing it in a mean way, but it's like, okay, you're touching grass in the rest of the world. Realize how the rest of the world's dealt with this war. One of my favorite characters, Suki, who's in charge of the Kyoshi Warriors, a warrior class on Kyoshi Island, basically puts it into him, okay, that's not how we work here. You don't have to be protective of us. You don't have to, mock us for us being warriors. In fact, why don't you come down and see how we actually train? And through that whole single episode, he starts realizing what they had to do to protect themselves isn't too dissimilar from what he had to do to protect his own tribe because of this great war that's occurring in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And the sexism stuff still is brought up regularly because he has he literally dates the moon at one point. That's a whole story. He's the comedic relief. But eventually he comes to realize, hey, other people are dealing with similar issues that I did, and maybe I need to understand different cultural differences. Maybe I just need to take a cooler on this whole thing. So when you have an actor for the live action adaptation stating, well, we're taking out his sexism, that is implying that you're taking out this very key plot point about Sokka, which means we're taking away his imperfection, the thing that makes us interested in his character progression. How am I supposed to assume the rest of this live action adaptation is going to go? And then we, of course, got the How to Train Your Dragon live action adaptation movies coming out. Why do we need a live action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon? The trilogy is near perfect. It's one of the most successful DreamWorks films. Why do you have to make the same thing again? I know your answer. Well, it's going to make profit. It's going to be the uncanny valley. It's going to be an imitation. We are going to inevitably compare it to the original, and we're most likely going to prefer the original due to that built-in nostalgia. You could tap into it for the cheap profit, but it ain't going to last long. And after years of these studios failing, people are getting tired of it. You're going to see box office bomb after box office bomb. And again, you have the creators of this, the people involved in this live action adaptation, How to Train Dragon, saying the same thing. Well, we're going to change things. We're going to be faithful, but we're going to change things. I have no faith in them. Stop remaking things that need no improvement, please, because you're all going to end up bankrupt. Then again, maybe just keep going, keep burying yourself into the grave. And one last thing I wanted to mention. I've noticed a lot of people in the past like 3 or 4 years online in the Avatar The Last Airbender community saying, oh, I always wanted a continuation of the show. And I never understood it because I went, why? It ended everything. Like season 3 ends with what the story started with. We start the series with the goal the show starts with ends in season 3. If you do a 4th season, while it'd be cool to see the characters again, it's just like, okay, now what? We're going to look like the fish in the plastic bags in the Sydney Harbor at the end of Finding Nemo. Now what? Like, okay, I like these characters, but I also want an engaging story to pay to buy the box set of the show or pay to rent the episode, That's how it works. So I've never been really interested in a continuation of the Avatar show. If it end up becoming good, I'd say nothing wrong with it. That's why I actually wasn't necessarily opposed to Legend of Korra, because it continued it, but in a more disconnected sense. It's like, okay, we're doing for new Avatar, a upgraded setting, and I do like the Republic City setting. I know there's a lot of people that backlash toward the 1930s background. They say, "Well, this isn't how it would. This doesn't make sense." I like it. I like steampunk. It's like a pseudo steampunk setting, so I'll allow it. I enjoyed it. I like the first season of Korra, but Korra has a lot of problems, and Korra went out on you all know I don't like the ending to Korra, and I think it caused a lot of issues for the franchise, which it's still reeling from to this day. Actually, the only real thing I've really enjoyed a continuation for the Kyoshi books. So this would have been, if you're in the plot line of Avatar, this would have been, I'm trying to think, this would have been not the Avatar directly before Aang, who's the Avatar in the main show, would have been the one before, Roku, but before Roku, you had Kyoshi. And Kyoshi always had a mystery when she's brought up, and we also have this interesting plot detail that was always told us that she lived for like 200 years, and we're like, how? And the good news is this book really doesn't try to demystify that aspect. More, this is an origin story, Kyoshi. So it's a duology. Only 2 books are written. I actually recommend it if you want to stay in the Avatar universe, but you want to stay in the, I guess you want to say the pre-industrial age of Avatar, because I know a lot of people were thrown off by the 20th century tech and Legend of Korra. Check these novels out. I will say there's certain areas where it can go wrong and may turn you off, but I overall enjoyed the origin story of Kyoshi. Rise of the Kyoshi especially enjoyed this. Like the first 2 thirds are a completely different story. This last third is basically the finale that we were promised in Rise of Kyoshi. So still read Shadow Kyoshi, but really it's just for the last few moments. So yeah, I definitely recommend, if you're a fan of Avatar The Last Airbender, want a continuation, but you want to stay, you don't want the main cast of Avatar The Last Airbender ruined, check these out. I recommend it. Plus, Kyoshi takes no prisoners. She is an absolute badass and doesn't mess around with criminals. There is no wishy-washy. Do I kill them? Don't I kill them? No, she don't really give a crap. And she's like, you broke the crime. You broke the law. Face the consequences. Fu Man Blue just stepped out a few minutes ago. Thank you for tuning in. But I've got to sack out. Oh, I thought you said I got sacked. I was a little concerned there. Thank you for tuning in. And we are going to wind down tonight's stream. I would like to thank you all for tuning in to, I guess, what kind of became our 2,000 subscribers special. My rant probably chased everybody off. They're like, wait, I came here for the historical content. Now he's talking about some Chinese-looking cartoon. What's going on here? Hey, I can be a nerd sometimes. Before you leave, if you could do me a huge favor, there's a like button down below. Consider hitting that because it'll let the YouTube algorithm know you like seeing content like this. And if you have not done so already, if this is the first time you are watching Uncut History and enjoyed this stream, be sure to subscribe to the channel, be it here on YouTube or the Hate Book or on Rumble. We typically go live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have a new episode of Retracing History coming out this Saturday. That should premiere around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be real exciting. It's going to be about Robert E. Lee's headquarters in Gettysburg. So I'm very much looking forward to it. It was an interesting, it went down a direction I was not expecting. And you'll see what I mean when you watch it on Saturday. And I believe that is all I have to say. So all I have to do is hit the music wherever I put the music. I think this is the music. Is this the music? That's not the music. That's a titanium. What? Well, guys, thank you for tuning. We'll see you. Well, hopefully I see you this Saturday for the premiere of the new Retracing History episode. But if not, we will see you next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good night, everybody.